We will call the Waldport City Council meeting of July 9 to order. Roll call, please.
Councilor Virtue.
Here.
Councilor Dunn.
Here.
Councilor Holland.
Here.
Acting Mayor Woodruff.
Here.
Councilor Campbell.
I'm here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. First thing on the agenda is the minutes of June 9 council meeting. Go ahead.
Did you have something to say?
No, go ahead.
I make a motion we accept the minutes as submitted.
And I'll second that.
Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Next item is the opportunity for our public to bring us any of their concerns or comments. So if there's someone here that would like to speak to the council, please go to the podium and state your name. Not seeing anybody rushing forward. Okay, on to discussion action items. We are going to move item C, the open council positions, up to the first position. And let me get my packet open correctly here. We have, amazingly, 4 candidates that have, I assume you're all here. I know 3 of you. Jerry Townsend, are you? That's you. Okay. So, Rick, I don't recognize you without your hat. Sorry. So you're all. No, that's fine. Just now I know that's you. Okay, so we have 4 positions. Before we go any further, I just would like to address the council. I have some concerns. We have never had so many candidates for some open positions as far as appointing them. So I'm a little concerned and would like to see us leave that to the voters, since there are 4 of you for only 2 positions. We have often in the past appointed one person, usually with one candidate, to fill a position until the next election. But this seems to me of a different magnitude, and I know that whoever we appoint will have an advantage in the election because often people vote for an incumbent. So that's just something I'd like to throw out to the council as a further discussion before we...
There's a question.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Hi, Sue, Alana Mickless.
Hi.
How's everyone? Some people know me and some don't, but glad to meet you. Sue, I would like to ask the council if it would be easier on the council if I withdraw to make it easier for you. I am very happy working on the City Parks Commission and all the other things that I do for town. People who know me, I am the bookkeeper for St. Anthony's, and I am, of course, chair in the choir, but I'm not doing the choir because of COVID. And for other things, I'm the treasurer and the secretary for the City Parks, so you'll be getting my financials and my minutes from City Parks. And for the Master Gardeners, I'm the treasurer for the whole county. So for the things that I do, the reason I was here was to help my community.
Right.
You know me personally.
Right, I do.
I'm a helper. That I am, and Rick knows me also personally, that I'm a helper.
Right.
And in this instant, if it would help the council, I would be more than happy to step back because I have a lot of students, but I also want to continue to serve my community
Right.
that I'm very inclined in.
Right.
So I know you know me, Greg. Greg was the first one who met me when I moved to the home. He was our first calling me, Greg, I have a mouse.
What I was
Could
going
I unsubmit my name? Is that all right?
Well, my remarks were not to try to intimidate anybody
No,
from
I-
applying. It was
Yeah.
a totally different
And I am not
point of view.
believe
Yeah.
everyone here are a truthful, not a liar. I will truthfully tell you, I am not intimidated whatsoever.
Good,
There's not
good.
anything, you know me. There was very little that can intimidate me.
All right.
See, what I was going to say, I was going to say something.
Yeah.
I talked to Rita before the meeting, and actually there are 4 seats up for election instead of just what we discussed earlier.
Right,
So there are 4 seats up for election.
but we don't know that
We don't know
there's
who's running,
openings.
but,
Right, right.
so I was just going
right,
to suggest
right.
there may be more than enough seats for 4 candidates to run.
All right, so I could reconsider,
Yeah.
pay the $50
Right.
when the time
Right.
comes.
Oh, there's no fee to run. There's no fee to
Well,
run.
there
Yeah,
is-
well, there's
there
the
is no
$50,
fee,
yeah.
But there is a fee to have.
To put your name,
In the-
to put your
yeah,
candidate
right.
statement in the ballot.
So I would like to withdraw my name, make it easier for the council, and I will be an active part of the community, as you all know me. And that's what I would like to do to help.
Karen,
So I sent an email out late, a couple hours ago. The Planning Commission has a bunch of vacancies,
two, yeah.
and is it only 2?
Yeah, it's just two.
And so there's those 2 vacancies. I know my introduction to Waldport City Business was a meeting in which there were multiple candidates applying to an
Right.
appointed position on the city council. And it ended up getting split with 2 of us going on the planning commission and 1 going on the council. And it seems to me that might be a reasonable way to go also. Whether or not, so there are 2 slots now
Yeah,
on the planning
there are
commission.
4 openings in the city, 2 in the planning commission, 2 in the council. Then there will be another slot or 2 open, depending on who decides to continue. I mean, there will be seats up for election. Some may be held by incumbents, some may be open. That we don't know.
Well, there's going to be 4 on the ballot regardless.
Right,
It doesn't
right,
matter.
right.
They're going to
Right.
happen no matter what.
Right,
There's going to be 4.
right.
Well, and Susan's right in the fact that incumbency has a little heads up.
It does,
A little
yeah.
head start.
Right.
But, and I don't know all of you, or any of you personally, but, you know.
I'm assuming we have 4 very good
I'm
candidates.
excited
so-
about that.
Yeah,
because
right,
normally it's like-
exactly,
Normally, it's like pulling teeth.
exactly,
And not many people get in line to do that.
exactly.
So,
So I guess I would like to ask the candidates if any of them are interested in serving on the planning commission.
Okay, we've got 1, okay. Anybody else?
But
But you're already
I sit on the planning commission, and I think that if I moved to the council, then that would be another
That would be
seat
3
open.
vacancies.
Yeah, that would be 3
yeah,
vacancies, right?
Okay, so you're currently on the planning. commission.
Right, she is.
I thought that was the case.
So her natural progression would be up in the
Yeah.
city council.
I would be more than happy to begin where you need me. That's what I
Okay.
stand for. I am not up to date on all the Waldport government rules and laws. I want to be honest with everyone. I am very good at reading and comprehension, even though I might speak a little funny. Don't worry, I have a good
Yes,
brain.
you're
Right?
fine, yes.
So, had a couple strokes, recovering, but I'm very into helping community
Yep.
where you want me.
So, and I would have to say that Greg, were you on planning commission?
Nope,
Okay, Greg and I and Karen were all on planning commission,
and so was Dan at one.
and Dan was, and I think we kind of have a bias about, it's not a rule, but it is a good place to start, because things that are appealed from the planning commission do come to the council for resolution, and Oregon's land use laws are rather particular. So it's really good to have an understanding of those laws when you get to the council. But, it's like I say, it's not a rule. Okay, so we have 3 now. So how do we want to proceed? I still would advocate just letting it go to the election, but,
I would advocate election.
so that's, do we need to,
I'm in favor of appointing 2 people to fill the empty seats.
so do we need to poll 2 more, so, or make a motion when we're
I
there.
make a motion, we leave the seats empty until the election.
Of course, I would second it. Further discussion? Here you go.
I'd like to discuss a little bit. I
Yes.
just trying to formulate some questions in my own pea brain about, I understand the incumbency thing. Dan and I we've discussed it many times, and it's been 17 years when there were 2 people that applied for one spot, and we ended up appointing one versus the other, and then subsequently, the other fellow was voted in some 6 months later.
Mhm.
And so there's a little bit of history there. Incumbency here in Waldport is almost akin to just a continuation, because we've never had so many
Right.
people that wanted to get involved at the same time. Oftentimes people run unopposed.
Right.
They're-
Most often.
They're de facto
Yeah.
appointed because of that.
The only time I can remember an incumbent not winning was a person who did not put their name in the ballot. And I don't know if that was taken negatively by the
So
voters, but they were not reelected.
I don't know what level of expectation, and maybe that's where I am right now with the 3 that want to serve. In regards to submitting an application and then having an expectation of joining the city council to help. And now that this has come to light, how do you all feel about running for office?
You mean at the election?
Yeah, in November. I mean, are you,
Well,
go ahead, Rick, or.
I've already,
Who's
I've already submitted my,
You have, okay, that's one.
mine's in,
And Heidi's been serving for a few years now.
yeah, I got my eyes on the prize.
Yeah. You've been a public servant for, a fair amount of time now, and
I haven't decided for sure, but I think it's likely that I might consider it.
because it is a 4-year obligation,
Term.
and,
Actually, for point of
Right.
clarification, there's 1 2-year term and 3 4-year terms.
Because we
Because
keep, we
that are
keep,
coming up.
my term, since I had to offer my resignation to run for mayor,
Right,
is only filling out the 2 years left on my,
got you. And did we come to an agreement that the person has to resign when they run for the office
It's
of
in-
mayor? So
it's in
It is in the-
if they have 2
it's
more
in the
years.
bylaw.
if they have 2 more,
Yeah.
okay.
In the charter.
Yeah.
It is, okay. It's by charter.
Right.
So. And you can't run for both simultaneously.
No.
Right.
that is
So that
correct.
Right.
For whatever reason you're not elected as mayor, then
We lose
your
you.
position is
Somebody else will be filling it.
for 2 years.
Yep.
For the completion, yeah.
Well, elected.
So therefore,
Either he or I will be gone.
we could have 3 positions available, because 2 of you are running for 1 position.
Yep.
Right.
Is your council position up then?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
gone.
So yours is.
So
up.
either
Right.
he or I will be gone.
Right.
Yes.
Right, okay. It's an enigma.
It's
It
an
is an
enigma
enigma.
surrounded by.
So have any of the 3, well, I guess more for Rick and Jerry, have either of you served in city government in past places you've lived, or?
never was a desire of mine to be in city government. I was normally in volunteer programs or serve in the Navy. I guess you can call it a city government.
Sure.
This is a volunteer program.
Yeah.
Were you on a carrier?
I was.
That's much bigger than Waldport.
Well, we did have 5,500 people on it, so.
That's more than twice.
So we're gonna find ourselves in nearly the same situation that we almost always are. That if our 3 candidates all run, there will be 3 positions
But there may be more candidates. Who
And
knows
there
how
may-
many, yeah. With this
So-
level of interest, maybe we'll have 6
Well, I know,
candidates.
but currently, we've got 2 vacancies
Right.
and perhaps
Right.
1 other.
Right.
So all 3 candidates likely will be voted in.
Could be.
So I'd like to see it go to the vote.
Okay.
That's just the way I'm reasoning it.
Any,
Okay. Do we,
Are we ready? Do you have a?
I'd like to just appoint someone now, at least 1 or 2 people, so.
Well, I don't think we should appoint 1.
yeah. Right. Well, I think that's 3, 2 was, were we just discussing or did we actually make a
We're in
motion?
discussion.
You're
still
in
discussing.
discussion right now.
Of a motion though, right?
we have a motion.
Yeah, right, right, okay. So, unless there's further
So
discussion.
here's the one thing I would say.
Okay,
Since we decided we were going to put this out and ask for people to volunteer
Right.
at this time, and we put it out in March,
right,
and we asked for people to volunteer. If we take this action now, people showed interest, took time to show up to more than 1 meeting,
Mhm.
and now we say, oh, never mind, we're gonna let it go to election. Next time, we're gonna end up back with the old problem of people aren't gonna show up. Why would they show up when we're not serious about saying we're gonna appoint people to fill the seats?
In my 12 years, this is the first time we've ever had this problem with more than enough.
And I think we're doomed to go back to the other situation where there's just, people are gonna go like, why would I show up, take the time to give my interest into this? I know it's difficult to choose when, out of 3 people, we're gonna choose to leave 1 person out.
I'll argue.
And that's difficult, but
I'll
it's,
argue against myself then. Well, this is why discussion is.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because, and perhaps knowing, and nobody knows the future, that in likelihood, the 3 of them may be elected, provided we don't get others, then the person that may be left out, if the interest is there, will be on the ballot, hopefully.
Let the public decide, not
And let the public.
I can't believe that any 4 of these people would take the attitude that you're suggesting. They're obviously interested in serving. There is a way to serve. This is an unusual circumstance that we have and a reason for changing our mind. I mean, usually, as you say, we're twisting arms, trying to find somebody to serve. So anybody who steps forward, we're happy to appoint.
so then why wouldn't we do it? And so, Mark mentioned a previous situation where we had more than 1 applicant. Mike Schlossberg came to be appointed to the city council and ended up serving on the commission and then chose not to run and chose to stay on the planning commission because that is really where he fits. So to me, I don't understand why we wouldn't just say, we have planning commission spots, all 4 people could be appointed and put in their bio, in the voter's guide, that they've served Waldport either on the planning commission or on the city council. That gives all of them the equal footing since they volunteered. I mean,
Well, we had volunteers that fit that, the number that we had fit on the planning commission and the number that fit on city council. We don't have the same situation here. We have 3 that want to be on city council and 1 that wants to be on
Well,
planning.
and I don't think that we want to really advocate somebody to just join city council for the next 6 months, because that's not tenable for the planning commission either, just to hop in and hop out. It really takes longer than that, as you know, to be effective there.
Are we appointing the 2 current? Then I hate to keep referring to you in the 3rd. But then they would run for the 2 4-year seats?
They could run
Well,
for
they'd
whichever they
run
choose.
for-
Or, well, we don't know what's going to happen with the mayor's.
But there will be, well, right, that's true. So if
It could be 3
Karn's
4-year
mayor,
seats.
then they may all be 4-year seats, right?
Right.
no,
No.
the term I'm vacating
Oh,
will
that's right,
be a
because he's
2-year
already
term.
resigned, so that,
Oh, he's already
gone.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or she. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
There will be 3 4-year seats and 1 2-year seat.
And one,
Regardless
No
of-
matter what
regardless.
happens.
That's on
And
the
it-
ballot already. That's on the ballot.
right, right.
How long did you score this discussion?
Actually, we're still good. It was going, I had it a different way, but it was good.
Well, I think in that view, I'm perfectly fine with appointing 2 people.
Okay.
I really am.
So now we're back to 3-2 the other way. Okay, so I guess,
But we're discussing.
okay, all
I
right.
don't want to be a fence sitter, I try to look at both sides of the view, and I'm not ambivalent, I just, I can see both sides.
Yeah, it was easier for me to see both sides when it was the usual situation
Yes.
of having a person and an empty seat. And also, we're so close to the election. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not like
election's
we're
like,
2 years out or something. We're
But
within months.
It's the 4 months till the election.
It's 4 months of the election, but they don't take the seat for 6.
That's
No,
true.
The election is in November.
But it's first
They
of
take
November.
their seat first of January.
Yeah,
That's 1st of January.
right.
It's not like a presidential thing, then, not the 20th, okay.
But that's still 2 months, November, December to January. Right? So that's the other factor.
So
for
basically,
me.
we're all looking at you, Mark, because the rest, the other 4
Yeah,
of us are
We're
split.
decided, right, so you're the,
Oh,
You get to be just as honest.
well, I lean toward voting for in November.
For the election.
Yeah.
Okay.
then, shall we call
Shall
for
we
the
put it to
vote?
vote, or?
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed,
No.
No.
the motion carries. And I hope none of you will be offended.
And I hope you all run.
And we hope you will all run.
What's the deadline, Rita? August?
August something,
August 25th.
25th? Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was the 25th or 26th, but I'm pretty sure it's the 25th.
If any of you are interested in the planning commission, Alana, you indicated, I mean, you have the choice now, you can run for council
Yeah, you can run.
or be on planning commission. And-
I'll start at the right place in the planning
Okay.
commission. But do I need to put my name in or come to another meeting, or should
I-
I leave now or?
We could appoint you today, because we have declared that as an opening. There are
All
2
right.
openings.
Wait, I would take that appointment, and if you wish for me to leave this meeting, not to hear
Oh,
what.
no,
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 no.
no, you don't have to do that. It's an
I
open
make a motion, we
meeting.
appoint her today to the planning commission.
All right.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries.
Welcome to the planning commission.
Thank you very much. Somebody will send me info. about
Yes,
this.
Yeah,
we
Thank you,
will
Rita.
do that.
I have your email.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank
I
you.
don't think any,
You're welcome. My pleasure to work for the community.
thank you. Elaine.
Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
So I know Heidi would like to be on the council. She's already on the planning commission. Rick has indicated to me he's not interested in the planning commission unless he's changed his mind. And
If I can, I mean, I'm coming to serve. I mean, I have no
Okay.
problem with the
Okay.
planning commission. That isn't what my desire is.
Yeah.
Okay,
And if
He
I'm
said he's already
elected, I
fine.
don't
Yeah.
plan to be on the planning commission.
right.
I have other places that will fulfill me, but if there is a need, I'm
Okay.
I serve
All
the
right.
community to the best that I can.
And,
Is it possible to serve on both
no,
simultaneously? No, that's
no,
what I would.
yeah. So the choice is yours, either stick to your run for the council, or if you're interested in the planning commission and want to think about that, obviously you still have time to make those choices, so And we hope that you all will be part of the city, one way or the other. And it's just really nice to see, more than one candidate that we had to go out and arm twist one of our friends to do. So thank you very much, and we'll see you back, I'm sure.
I hope so. I hope we just haven't decided on 6.
And then you have before the 5.
We've had that happen.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. The next item is the Interpretive Center acquisition.
All right.
What about the business license?
Okay, I was going backwards, yeah,
going
sorry.
backwards, okay.
Well, let's jump to business license, that's fine.
Okay, business license?
Yeah, page 7.
Okay, so, to wrap up this topic, hopefully, I know we've gone back and forth a bit.
Yes.
One of the things in our investigation on how to do this is we determined that to change a limited action, to reduce the effect of an ordinance, can be done by resolution. So instead of having to amend the ordinance or produce a new ordinance, we can, because you're doing it for a limited duration and you're reducing the effect of a law, which an ordinance has an effect of a law, we can just do that by resolution.
Okay.
So we have created and brought forth a resolution that effectively does what was requested at the last meeting, and will be in effect this year.
Okay. And we've already sent.
And we've already
business
sent
license
everything out, so if you change your
right.
mind now.
So this is just a paperwork.
Over 50% of them respond already and pay, so.
Wow.
It's been a really good response.
Wow.
To the mail.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have resolution number 1263. And I assume we don't need a further vote on doing this because we already voted to do it, right? I don't mean the resolution, but carrying, but as far as the issue itself, yeah, okay.
The resolution is somewhat.
All right. So we have a resolution memorializing the council decision to prorate business license renewal fees as outlined in section 504090 of the Waldport Municipal Code, waiving late fees and penalties as outlined in section 110, and imposing requirements for non-renewal. Do we have a motion to approve?
I make the motion that we adopt resolution number 1263.
1263.
I'll second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we have Interpretive Center acquisition.
So, a brief update. So I'll let you all know last month that ODOT's process required them to open it up for a month for other interested parties. And at the end of that month, which ended on the 3rd, by the way, that they would notify us had anybody else stepped up. It's still not clear that they've not notified us that nobody else has said, that they've actually provided that information. However, we did get a call this week, and they asked us to redo a section of the memorandum of understanding, and that's actually in the mayor's box right now for signature.
Okay.
What they're basically asking is kind of what we already agreed to 18 months ago, which was that we commit to having some structure, which they will pay for, either an exhibit internally or some structure outside that commemorates the bridge project, which was the intent.
Right.
And that, and this is the important thing, they have also added a piece that says, should we fail to do so, if we turn it into a McDonald's, for example, within the next 20 years, they have a reversionary clause now
Okay.
included, which means that we are obligated to create some artifact that, and they've indicated that they will be very lenient to what that
Right.
is.
Right.
It should be noted that that is exactly the city's intention, is to continue to do that. So it was with no difficulty that I said, I believe that will be
Right.
palatable to the council and to our ongoing intent. they are still working through the process, and there are still several bureaucratic hurdles that they need to jump through, including there is a committee meeting in late July that the committee must sign off on a transfer of a state asset below a certain dollar amount of market value. And since they're transferring it to us at 0, they must go through that committee and get that approval. So that will also be another one of those that we'll wait for a call on the 25th to say, okay, that was met and we can go forward. So unfortunately, I cannot give you right now a timeline. Secondly, at some point, there was a request for us to do an inspection and evaluation of the building. We've previously gotten, ODOT has provided a list of deferred maintenance items, and their significant costs, and therefore that's how they were able to bring it down.
Right.
In reviewing that list, yes, they're significant. No, they're not anything that we don't have in spades in every other one of our buildings as an issue. So that was not determined at the time with City Manager Kemp to be a significant obstacle. Right now, there is probably some value. It will probably be between, it could be between $750 to $1,500 to do that level of inspection, similar to what we just did on another property. And that may provide the council some valuable information. So if that is the desire, I will go ahead and get that scheduled as soon as possible. I will say that scheduling that right now is very challenging in terms of time, but I think we can get it done by the next council meeting. So
I certainly would recommend that we do that, because I do know that there has been significant deferred maintenance, and we know that our climate is harsh on buildings. My bigger concern is just the overall maintenance of buildings, the present ones we have. We know right now that we have no staff to maintain our buildings, and they're not being maintained. So my concern is seeing the picture of how we add buildings, at least 2 more, if we're talking about, one of the other buildings we're looking at, and yet are able to take care of our assets, because I don't think it's good stewardship to continue to let, our buildings deteriorate. So that's the picture I'm looking for before I have a comfort level at saying, yeah, it's a free building, great. I love the building, it's an iconic building, the location is perfect, all of that, but there's that thing about money.
So, and I completely understand that, and I do know that we'll have a little bit more of that discussion later in the executive session in terms of, kind of that overall reserve scope. I will say for this building in particular, with the dedication of the transient room tax towards tourism and being able to describe this building as tourist related, we should be able to build very quickly a reserve fund for this building in particular. That, without taking away from any other building, because there's no other building that I can describe those funds to. So at this point, this building, I can say that if we were to accept it, we would be able to ascribe a reserve fund and efforts towards the maintenance of this facility in that transient room tax. And we are, through efforts that I'll discuss later, we are actually pursuing avenues to increase our transient room tax through some potential annexations, which will greatly strengthen that budget as well, to avoid the opportunity cost loss of picking up this building. Okay. And I do think that I don't know that the interest in the annexation would be as strong if, and I can't speak certainly, but I don't know if it would be as strong if we weren't moving ahead with this.
Yeah, certainly not. So today, there's really nothing to vote on, just it was an update about.
Well, so here is the kind of the dilemma.
Okay.
I don't know that there's not going to come an opportunity here where I will either be forced to call an emergency meeting of the council to say yay or nay if ODOT gets their act together and all of a sudden produces a transfer agreement. That we've kind of, in theory, we have agreed to this already in principle with the MOU, and that was 18 months ago. We had always kind of left that if there was a material issue, we could step back out. So I guess I'm trying to gauge the comfort level or direction, given the likelihood that we would potentially lose some additional transient rental income if we didn't do this, and that transient rental income will pay for it. I guess I'm looking for direction of, are we comfortable at this point going ahead with the acquisition of the building and then getting the inspection report just to let us know what we need to fix? Or do we want to hold off and potentially need to do kind of a last minute meeting if ODOT does somehow get their ducks in a row before our next council meeting?
I can't remember seeing demanding that we sign on a certain date
I don't,
before our next meeting.
I can't imagine either, but it has been a weird, I will say that it has been a weird process, and it is a process that isn't, I am concerned that if they come and say, okay, we're ready for you to sign, and we need to step back and kind of do a meeting and we're discussing it, I'm concerned that it will create some issue. And I don't know what that issue might be. I don't know whether they would view the delay as an opportunity to put it back through this part of the process again. I'm looking for do we have the ability, does the city have the ability to strike if the iron is hot, or do we want to wait and just let it run through its process for ourselves? We've been very patient with ODOT. I would hope that they would be patient with us, but I'm just trying to cover all bases.
The chamber has been utilizing that building for quite some time.
Yes.
And it had been noted, back when I was a chamber president, that there was some roof issues. I don't know about the rest of the inspection, but has that ever been addressed that we know of?
Go ahead.
I know that Dale mentioned that he got them to do some work on the road, I know.
I was just going to say, my understanding is, and this is from the former city manager, had indicated that his conversations with ODOT is that ODOT had gotten in there and addressed the primary leak issue.
They have.
Yeah, they didn't fix damage, but they took care of the actual leak.
The leaks had stopped,
Yeah, there was no buckets on the floor this last winter. That's as far as you go.
Well, I have been removed from the chamber for a couple of years now, and I just remember that was an issue. It had been ongoing. And so if that's been addressed, I mean.
Because I wrote a thank you letter to ODOT for the work for the chamber.
And I believe the roof still does need to be replaced, but like we say, at least there's not buckets on the floor anymore.
So the whole possibility of urgency for me before the fiscal year changed last week, I would have considered that a possibility that they might have wanted to clear the books by July 1st, but it would seem to me now that there's very little that would create that.
Honestly, my only concern in that is if they have a board meeting as well, saying, okay, you guys got to sign so we can get this cleared to the board meeting, or you have to wait another quarter. I don't know that waiting another quarter under COVID with the facility closed matters.
Right.
So I am not necessarily advocating one way or the other. I just want to throw that out there as a possibility where we may get delayed because we don't have the authority to sign without holding a special meeting. It's also not that difficult. It's also not that difficult to hold a special meeting.
I was going to say, so the worst case scenario is either we have to hold a special meeting or we have to wait a quarter.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not like
Or vote now.
Or vote now, but I don't think that is a necessary step.
We're testing what you said at the beginning about whether or not we could stomp all over your suggestion.
Stomp away.
How you're gonna
Stomp away.
I think we should wait. Something may come up. Who knows? We don't have to vote now, then I wouldn't do it. Something may arise.
I think I'm the same way. We can wait, we need a special meeting, we can, 24 hours have that, so it's.
Yeah.
But I would advocate that we schedule an inspection, because
Okay.
I think that's a good piece to have in front of us.
Okay, I will do so.
Is the rest of, I mean, that probably should be a vote since that's money.
I would move that we go through the inspection process.
Is there a
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
So just a matter of maybe a technicality of how things work. With that, with the amount of, that an inspection is that money that you can just spend anyway?
Generally, yes, but having.
It's not budgeted.
It's not budgeted,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
well, it's not budgeted per se, it's within the funds that we have available to do those type of things,
Right.
but this motion will allow me to explore using, say, contingency or some other fund.
Okay, the next item is discussion of the possibility of health care for part-time employees. Page, whatever it is, 15.
So, as most of you know, we are, I've done a review, it was looking at the healthcare options for the next year. And I did a formal review internally of what we were getting, what we were paying for, and what the other options were. Several years ago, the state legislature, on request of several of the League of Oregon City members, passed a law that allows the city or city municipalities to join PEP. So if you think of our current insurance provider, CIS, they are, usually most of the cities and counties use CIS for insurance. So you've got a pool that's yay big. PEB is all of DAS, all the universities, all the schools, so they've got a pool that's this big. Because of that and the economies of scale, their buying power is a little stronger. And so, though the costs barely change, what you get for those costs and the quality of insurance for the employee and the quality of benefits for the employee is better. Along with that, it allows the employee to choose outside of a fixed bucket of services to allow them to pay for additional services under PEP. So for example, they can purchase accidental death and dismemberment. They can purchase spousal life insurance. They can purchase other features that have been deemed useful to the members over time. In doing so, the conclusion that I came to was that for the exact same dollar amount, or a very close dollar amount, we can actually provide a superior insurance package to our employees at no extra cost. In looking at that, however, one of the pieces that PEB allows is that you can actually enroll your part-time employees without too much difficulty. They are treated, because they're part-time, you actually split the costs between the full, you basically pay a 50% prorate. The employer pays 50% and the employee pays 50%. Right now, we have 2 employees that are above 0.5 FTE, but are not full-time. And so I had their supervisor reach out to both of them, and they both indicated that they would be interested in paying that portion, the employee pickup portion of the health insurance. So with that in mind, I wanted to bring this idea forward, and it doesn't need to be decided on today. We do have some time. We will need to have an idea effectively maybe before October, although I think we can even push it all the way to January when the new coverage might start. But I wanted to bring this up as this is something that, as the city, creates parity among employees that are working at least half-time or more. Right now, we have several employees that are working more than half-time, but are almost treated like temporary employees. They don't accrue the vacation time, they don't accrue any other tangible benefits, and they don't see the same treatment in terms of salary or in terms of anything else over time. This would allow us to at least encourage some retention and I guess provide some compensation for these employees in terms of when they leave the position, it is an attractive position that would be likely filled by a qualified applicant.
What is considered, from the insurer's standpoint, considered full-time?
Full-time is what's a 1.0 FTE, or
In terms of hours per week or a salary position, is it
so that
32
gets,
hours a
so that
week
gets a little
or-
tricky. If an employee in a salaried position, the standard work week at the normal level is expected to be 40 hours. So a 1.0 FTE position is generally a 40-hour position.
So these part-time, you say, it says greater than 50.
So greater than 0.5, so that is a 0.5 FTE. In other words, they work over 20 hours a week.
They work over 20. But does the insurer say that full-time is 40 hours?
Yes.
It
It's,
does.
it's industry,
Specific.
yeah, it's industry standard across the board.
Well, I don't know that that's the fact, but because some places are 32.
Yep.
So,
And that's why I asked.
So the places that are 32 are generally medical providers or providers that have a different scope of what a full-time FTE looks like. But the state across the board is for, and I guess I should be specific
Is
here.
that for like government employees then?
Yeah,
Or civil service employees and
yeah.
that sort of thing?
Government employees, DAS considers 0.1 FTE to be 40 hours a week.
Okay. So they're not considered full-time if they're less than 40 hours.
Correct.
Okay. So is there a reason we have 2 half-time employees and they're not full-time employees?
So we have, and Sue is unfortunately out today, but so we have had in the past part-time employees staffing a lot of our library services. Our library budget, and we'll discuss that a little bit later as well, our library budget has grown, and one of the biggest causes is that we've increased FTE in our library staffing. The reason that they're not full-time employees, and if Sue were here, because this is what she said to me, was because our budget can't afford it.
Okay.
So historically, by having less than full-time employees, it has kept the costs in the library budget down.
Well, of course, insurance is a really important thing to people. I'm glad that the decision doesn't need to be made right now in the climate of COVID and nobody's sure what finances are going to look like anywhere.
Is there an annual enrollment period that
October. That's actually why I mentioned we'll probably need to know by October, because it takes them, so we had to declare by July 1st which insurance plan we were moving to. We actually found out there was a little leeway in that, so we actually haven't, we've stated our intention, but we haven't committed yet. Just because I am waiting to see rates from both players. I do feel though that PEB has a commitment to keeping the rates at a certain level legislatively. CIS does not have that same onus, so their rates, looking at them over the years, CIS has increased faster than PEB. So I do think that PEB is going to be, almost certainly our choice for the city, especially since the benefits are better, the co-pays are better, the percentage that they pay of doctors' visits is better.
we are certainly not the only city that has this issue?
No.
Have we done any homework on
I-
what others have done?
I did, and it is very common, and I won't say it's across the board, but it is very common that employees over 0.5 FTE are given benefits. Several of my colleagues that I spoke to basically said, oh, you don't already have to do that. So it is not uncommon in cities to see employees, once you hit that 0.5 FTE, that you start paying benefits. Matter of fact, there's many employees that are 0.49 FTE, specifically so that they don't have to pay health insurance and PERS.
And that's why I quizzed you, because I thought the law was that above
You have to pay,
0.5.
you have to pay
had
some benefits,
yeah,
but not health
benefits.
insurance
Okay.
apparently. I was actually quite shocked. When I did my review, I was actually surprised when I realized that they were not getting health insurance. We do have one other employee that is below 0.5, but it was very easy as he's covered by the VA and it
Okay.
didn't matter at all.
Oftentimes, insurers will look at who a primary would be in regards to insurance, for example, husband and wife, one is a primary, one is, piggyback. Do either of these two fall into that category where a spouse is covered under a different plan?
I can't speak, well,
Because insurers, when you have two insurers and one person, there can be dispute. It happens.
I can't speak to their specific situations, but I will say that both employees did say that they would be interested in doing it.
You do mention that you're talking about doing an analysis of healthcare cost and benefits, basically, for the
So,
employees in general. So
one
would
of
we
the-
have that before the decision on this?
And that was kind of one of the things that I wanted you to direct, because it's going to
Okay.
take a fair bit of work to do.
Right.
One of the things that really has become apparent in doing this whole healthcare analysis is the amount of money that we spend on healthcare as a city. It is nearly the equivalent of what we're spending on our sheriff's contract. So it is $310,000 or so for this year. Annually.
And
So it is a large chunk, of what we spend out of our city budget is on these healthcare expenses. And this is an important thing and kind of an intimidating thing as a new city manager, that number historically rises by 3 to 5% a year, no matter what. It is almost unknown that that number sits below 3% at any given time. So, unless we see some radical change in the healthcare system, which is very possible, this is a cost that is still going to be going up for us by, approximately $10,000 to $15,000, almost guaranteed a year.
Are we, and I don't know how government works versus a private company, but are we bound by a certain group of insurers?
Yes.
We are.
Yeah, well, we can go out to the private market. None of the private market comes close to what we're getting through PEB or CIS. CIS is a bigger pool. I mean, CIS is actually a pretty competitive insurance if you're looking outside, with the exception of if you can look to a bigger group like PEB. And that's why cities went to the legislature and actually asked, was because they felt that CIS was not an attractive plan. I think it's very good compared to the open market plans in terms of cost versus benefits, but it just doesn't compare to that larger Public Employees Benefit Board plan.
so, any thoughts from the rest of you? Mark and I have been talking away.
Just trying to get clarification.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, since we don't have to decide anything today,
I've never had a situation where I could get insurance if I was less than three-quarter time.
That's what we
Yeah,
brought up, to do
yeah.
2 hours.
Yeah.
And I-
that's what, I was surprised too.
Working
because
for
I-
UPS, it was 32 hours.
Minimum.
Right,
Starbucks,
Well, and right now, we're at 1.0, we're at 40 hours. We have an employee who's working 0.7 FTE and is not getting benefits.
0.7.
Yeah.
but we're talking about offering it and covering half the cost.
Yes.
right.
Interestingly, and this gets back to a historic perspective, the last two city managers, for a while Nancy, or for a long time Nancy was a 0.8 FTE. And Kerry certainly was in the last year as well. And if you look at his negotiated contract, we paid his health insurance as if he was a 1.0 FTE.
Right. Which typically,
0.8 is
we would,
32.
Yep.
right. Yeah, well, both Nancy and then Carrie became 4 days.
If we have a 0.7, well, if they use full-time, and I get it, the FTE full-time employee is 40.
Of course, both Carrie and Nancy, to put it in a little different light, were salaried, so you do the job. The hours,
So-
Yep.
don't.
So we're talking.
As I've learned.
That's right. Welcome
So
to.
the cost to add 2.5 to the insurance is That's the 19,000 a year.
So our average cost per a full-time employee is about $19,000 to add insurance.
So for me, in light of some of the other things we're gonna talk about, it's really hard, I mean, if this was a year ago, I don't know that I would even flinch at, like, why wouldn't we offer new benefits to people? It's just really hard right now in this environment to say, let's give somebody a new benefit that they weren't expecting, isn't part of the current package.
That's
I would
kind of
love,
where I am, too.
to me, it would be great if we could do it, but
I think everybody would go out and work half-time if they knew everything was covered. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Tough.
Well, and
You want to give
hopefully,
people insurance. I mean, I'm really torn because
right, it's important.
morally, I think everyone should have health coverage, but I'm also torn because it's tax dollars we're talking about here too. And we have so little to spend.
philosophically, I'm in favor of cutting health insurance being tied to employment at all.
Exactly,
Yeah, well,
so-
exactly. Me too, actually. So, and as I said in the beginning, you know, if this wasn't in the midst of COVID and we had more
Yeah.
idea of where the world is going, and maybe we will have better idea by October. Are we anywhere back to normal, or are we still pretty much where we are right now and see more and more effects of diminished economic activity? So, discussion to continue?
Yeah, well, you know, as a business person, I've been in business for myself for some nearly 40 years. It's always been incumbent upon myself to do things, and when you're involved with either a union and or a larger company that may not have been unionized, I don't know if UPS is or was or
Yes.
isn't, but oftentimes that's an incentive for people to work. And it used to be you know, a government job didn't get paid as much, but they had great benefits. They would oftentimes continue into retirement. And now oftentimes, government employees are paid equal, if not greater, than some private companies, and they still get all that benefit. So, you know, as a personal thing, it's kind of a current, you know, if a person employs themselves and recognizes that they're a half-time employee and they've taken on that job as either a supplement to what they've already got, or they're keeping themselves busy because they're otherwise bored, there should be, or probably is not, an expectation of those benefits.
So since
Why-
we're,
I don't know.
Yeah, I would like to table this
for further discussion.
for discussion and,
So I think one of the pieces that I would like to do, if it's allowable, is I would like to be able to bring back a larger, comprehensive kind of look so that
Right.
everyone understands exactly what we're paying, how it's divvied up. And so we can have a good discussion about what
Right.
healthcare costs the city. And more importantly, to give you a better picture of what healthcare is going to look like in terms of costs over the next 5 years. Because this is, you know, there are costs that I can control and understand how to control. But the healthcare benefit is a piece that, you know, it is going to be that unslayable dragon that continues to just go up and up and up. And we will need to come up with some
Right.
modicum of control
Policy.
for it, because, you know, money doesn't grow on trees. And, you know, the reality is that the increase in our revenues is not likely to match it anytime soon.
Right. Well, and I know that you are intent in working on giving us better information. And one thing, along with this subject, you know, what's the total that we see health insurance broken down by department, but what's the total for health insurance? What's the total for PERS? You know, those kinds of numbers. If there was a summary to our financial, that would be,
Absolutely.
it would be much more meaningful than trying to put all the department pieces together and decide what we're doing, you know?
I can't answer the PERS right now, but I can
Well,
answer
yeah.
the healthcare is
Right.
310,000.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had only seen it also, much like you, broken down
Right.
by department.
Right.
I was quite startled when I saw the full number.
Because we've always gulped over the cost of
The sheriff's
sheriff's
contract.
contract. Well, and PERS must be up there too, right?
It's not nearly as high.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll get that number
Yeah,
for you and
okay.
I'll send that out.
I'm surprised. So, moving on, unless there's anybody else wishes to comment? Okay. Next, goals and projects workshop scheduling.
So one of the pieces that we had talked about when we talked about hiring a new city manager,
Right,
and this was before I kind of got in the mix,
right,
was when we were doing the goals, we knew that we would be hiring a new city manager into the position, and that was a good opportunity to go back and revisit the goals.
right,
Now, I know that I ended up getting hired and I know what the goals are,
right.
but I think that there is some real value into sitting down and taking a look at both where we are on the goals and in the time of COVID and some priorities, kind of maybe, because when we did the goal, meeting, we really, this wasn't happening.
Right, absolutely.
And maybe realigning, and because we do have some big decisions to make. One of them is, involving the library. So I think it would be useful to schedule a workshop either in late July or late August to sit down and just kind of re-go over the goals and recenter exactly where, as funds are diminished, where we really need to laser focus.
So this would not be in place of next year's
This
look
is
at
just,
goals.
this
So
is just a realignment
okay.
with COVID,
Okay.
a chance for us all to sit together in a workshop
Okay.
and take a quick look and just say, okay, under COVID, do we adjust priorities?
Okay.
Do we kind of refocus on very specific things? Do we, our goal statements are pretty broad,
Right.
but several of them are building out programs that a lot of people come together and can go, and get together.
Yep.
We may need to rethink how that works.
Right. You had a comment?
Maybe it was kind of answered, but I guess my perspective is, we're so close to an election and adding,
New.
or,
Yeah.
a major turnover of the structure. And we decided not to take action on adding new council members because we're so close to an election and the change of dynamic. It's hard for me to see how we proceed with setting an agenda with the city council that in 4 months, 5 months is not,
To be
the
fair,
makeup isn't gonna be at all.
to be fair, I did put that after the council,
Yeah.
anticipating that there would be 2 new councilors and that would be really useful.
My thought was going in that same direction. And I agree, because I think my recollection was that I'm the one that brought that forward. I don't think it's something that we can put off for a few months.
February or something, maybe.
All right, so as an alternative then, what I may do is I may go through the goals and kind of bring some specific items that may no longer
Yeah.
apply
Right.
as
Okay.
much.
Okay,
Just so that I can get, it's easy to drive the bus from remembering where I wanted to drive the bus 6 months ago, but I'm trying to respect that I'm no longer the driver of the bus, I'm the engineer in the bus.
yeah, I think that's good.
Anything that's germane to the 5 of us that have been working on for the past few years.
Well, and that needs action in the rest of the
Yeah.
year, because, because obviously everything's not gonna get done, so what, to agree on what the targets are and what the priorities are, given the circumstances, I think that's good. Okay. Planning Commission resignation and vacancy, we've already taken care of one of those. So we've been presented with some options, whether to.
Which kind of makes those moot, by the way, as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, right, exactly. So maybe we can just kind of skip over that. Are you going to lose the bet, or what should we do here?
No, I'll just talk longer here, sure.
Okay. So do we just want to leave it at the status quo? If so, I don't think we need to take any action.
No.
So what's the other seat that's open? Who's,
Ruth has just resigned.
oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and Kitty.
Mayor?
Maybe out of order, but, you know, I was thinking it might make sense for me to volunteer to serve on the planning commission.
So was I, so now,
All right, if those two are going to planning commission, I'll come back to the meeting. That out, that's all. Everybody in favor?
This is funny.
You figure it out.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah.
you have nominees, now you get to decide.
Well, you've already filed for
I've
council.
already filed. I hope we do that in
I guess the only thing I would say to you, and I would encourage you to do whichever you want, but I think I would discourage you if you're just thinking of signing up for 6 months at the planning commission and then hopping over, because it's just not
so
long
hard to
enough.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like I said, I might find that something that really suits me well or not.
yeah.
Well, I beg your pardon, what was your background again?
I've taught college journalism.
Oh, right, I read your
Right,
bio.
right.
Okay.
And was a political reporter.
Right.
For the state legislature.
Yeah, I remember.
Investigative reporter and editor. And then I've had 2 small businesses also.
It sounds like,
Well, maybe the commission might suit you.
I was just thinking the opposite. It sounds like more political.
He says he's been in business, he's had
Yeah,
small businesses.
well,
of
he did
his
say
own,
he
and-
was a contractor, I think, which,
Was
That was only one of them. I
Yeah, that
also
was
did
one of them.
photojournalism as a full-time career, and I had a business with multiple employees doing Macintosh consulting. So I'm all over the chart, you know, it's just kind of crazy. Too much versatility is,
Yeah,
you know, a good thing.
it's a
and
burden, I know.
so, would you be more
At this point,
comfortable
I
thinking
don't have
about
an
it?
intention, but I thought, you know, even
Yeah.
6 months of learning would be helpful.
Do you want to think about it, and if you still feel that way next month, or if you're certain you want to do that, that's fine too.
Do you think I could get up to speed in that little time on the planning commission? I mean,
I think,
With your,
Bodies.
with your background,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Because it's, to me anyways, it wasn't so much that I know the city code backward and forward, because I still would have to look everything up online. But you seem like the kind of person that could quickly find your footing
yeah.
with understanding that kind of document. And
You also may sit and decide, the hell with this.
right. Right.
I did, and I still got drugged back in.
And the city council has had 2 people just quit just in the last 2 years. 2 people quit just because it was just not to their liking.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So,
I hope it doesn't seem like I'm blowing smoke, but
No.
I really like the tenor of this body and the collegiality and the thoughtfulness with which you're doing your business.
Well, then stick
It's
to your
it's
guns.
what good government
Yeah.
should be like.
And you really should probably stick with
Yeah,
this,
just
because
stick-
this is much
Stick with your
more,
guns, yeah.
much more,
This is where the buck stops, right?
yeah.
The other area I know is a lot more technical because I've
Right.
had to deal with that from a reporting point of view, you know, in the past.
if you like a 4-hour meeting about goats, although we ended up with a half-hour meeting here about goats.
And it still hasn't been.
And it is, right?
dark side with me.
Let me think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
just that.
yeah, I,
The seats will still likely be
Right.
open.
yes, exactly. Okay, where are we?
Do we have any, like, empty budget committee seats we need to fill too while we have
Willing
volunteers?
people.
I know we just finished that, but still.
Right, well, and all of them that get on the council will be on the
The
budget.
budget.
Yeah, right. So,
How about if you're on the city planning, can you be on the budget then?
Yes,
I assume.
I was.
Oh, were you,
have
were-
a tremendous
right, that's right.
Accounting background, oh, give me
Yeah,
a budget
perfect.
and I'll balance it.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Great. That requires producing money.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna go give her our
Yeah,
budget.
exactly.
Although we are not as bad as other municipalities in this
Yes, right,
county.
exactly. Okay,
That we'll discuss in a little bit too.
so any other issues?
Did we, where are we at? Did we need
We're
to
at-
accept Ruth's resignation or?
We
that
haven't,
doesn't-
we haven't got to it yet.
Oh.
Is that part of, that
That was part of F.
That was for the planning commission.
Oh, was that part of the planning commission
Yep.
filling? Okay, so do we need a
Yes.
motion to accept her? Oh,
When we
right.
get to citizen comments, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, on the second one?
on the
Yep.
second one, okay. So do we need to accept Ruth's resignation?
Maybe we should fire
And
her
announce
first.
the vacancy.
Okay. So I entertain a motion to accept the resignation and announce the vacancy.
I move.
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion?
With appreciation to Ruth for
Absolutely.
everything she's done for the community.
And we're sorry to see her go and close her shop
But-
too.
But glad she can go spend time with the
Her-
grands
her
and the
kids
great grands.
grandkids. Yep, yep. She deserves it.
You bet.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Let's move to committee reports. We have you.
So you should have a project from the Parks Committee as a
Yes.
carry-on. And I will turn that over to Mayor Woodruff to
Okay.
present.
I'm sorry you guys didn't get this ahead of time because it's our action for our next project after the planters is to spiff up Katy Wayside. And a lot of that we have the means of doing ourselves. Where it gets into some information and work that we will need beyond that is on, is this all of it? Does it look like it is?
Yeah, it's double sided.
Yeah, but, so just to describe the project quickly, and Alana can help me here, she's here. First of all, around the memorial benches, it's weedy, and I know that the people who put those benches in are supposed to take care of it, but we thought, just in the interest of beautifying the city, we would go ahead and do that this time for them. And then there's, along the border between the first house, that, all those vegetations are quite overgrown, and so the property owner is interested in maintaining their privacy and their windbreak, but they are willing to allow us to kind of diminish that somewhat, just because it's encroaching on the park. The other thing is that somebody, Scott, I suspect, were you the one who did the new sign for the 911 commemorative thing? It looks really nice. Yeah, it looks very nice. Thank you for doing that, because we expected to see the old one, and we were kind of shocked to go and see that it had already been done, and really nicely. But the roses, there's a bank of roses there, which are kind of overgrown in that area too, so we'll take care of those. There's some other shrubs and things that need to be worked on. So that part, we're able to do. The other things that we talked about were the stripes for the parking are very worn, need to be repainted. We're looking it'd be nice to have some stops for the cars along, that are parking along there, so they're not, encroaching off of the pavement. And the other thing was, there was a talk about, because a lot of people park there and then go across the street either to Fresh, or they go through that parking lot and start their walk through the town. So there was a concept about, could there be a crosswalk there? Because there is a lot of, especially people that come off of 101, often speed as they come off of that and shoot up Maple Street. So just something to alert them that there are pedestrians that cross there. So these last things I've mentioned, and then there was one more.
For the Micklets are gonna custom build a planter box for under the kiosk.
Right.
And we will fill that planter box with some wonderful soil and amendments. And
Right.
we will keep the flowers looking beautiful. So when they come into town, they're gonna see not only the beautiful planters, but we'll have a beautiful planter box under the kiosk that will not encroach on the kiosk.
Right.
In the fall, when we are working back on the planters, that we, can everyone understand me or no?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, so, in the fall, when we redo our planters, we are gonna take the mugu pine, and around the pavilion area, there's a strip about 2 feet, it's a circular.
Right.
We will get that soil, and we are gonna mix it all up and put the nice compost and make it wonderful soil, and we will transplant the mugu pines around
Right.
the pavilion area. Hopefully, if we beautify that, that is our first pole as you enter Waldport from the south heading north. That's our first impression that people are going to see beautiful flowers in a
Right.
beautiful area. They would want to stop there. We are getting a second picnic table from the neighbor
Right.
that Sue talked about.
Right.
She has a really nice picnic table that she is donating to Katie Wayside, sorry. She will bring it around and we will position it, so then we'll have 2 picnic
Right.
tables there. There was a brown, sorry, keep going on, but there was a brown box for the dog bags.
Right.
We need to verify and make sure those dog bags are available, so that people who are stopping to walk their dogs in a beautiful area will have a dog bag to pick up their dog poop. And also, we were talking about the garbage cans,
Yes.
making sure those are really noticeable, that people know that they are the trash. And the other thing, sorry, keep going back, seems I'm kind of feel like I'm in charge of the project, because I do all the secretary else. The other thing is that there was an open hose right by the pavilion.
Oh, right.
Anybody can put their hose, any RV or anybody, and take the city water. We would like to put a lock on that bib
Right.
and have Jimmy, am I saying his name right?
Yes, right.
Have Jimmy, who was our half-time with the City Parks Commission committee, have Jimmy have the key or some way to keep that locked, so that Waldport can save money and not have people stealing the water out of there. But when we go to water our plants and stuff, this will be a good way for us to have instant water by the pavilion. I'm done.
And I think one more thing was, Maple Street has speed bumps. Those were the first, and I think maybe the only speed bumps that Waldport has. And I don't know that they were terribly well engineered, but they certainly have flattened over time. So whether, because there's a lot of, according to the residents down there, the speeding, of course, I used to live on that street, so I understood what it was like at that point, but they say it's much worse now as far as speeding through there. Now,
So
I know-
I'm working with ODOT now.
Okay.
On the speed issue for Maple. I had
Okay.
a conversation with them the other day, and we're gonna have another conversation this next week.
Okay.
ODOT, all roads are ODOT's, basically, even the ones within city streets. They set the speeds, they set the control devices
Okay.
to an extent. We can put up a stop sign, but there's a book of rules, as Scott described it, the book of rules is this thick. We're not sure, as Scott described it the other day, we're not sure that the speed bumps there are legal
Okay.
in terms of us replacing them or examining them and redoing them, we're not sure what we can do there. So we're
Okay.
gonna have a discussion with
Okay.
ODOT. And that's not the only street, by the way, that we're going to have that discussion
Okay.
around. Because there have been complaints about the speed issues up by the schools.
Absolutely.
Which is county, which gets a little weird, but we still want to have that discussion. We also have some issues with how the speed goes on south of town
Right.
in some areas and coming down the seawall. So we're going to have a broader discussion with
Great.
ODOT about speeds,
Great.
and then we'll come back
Okay.
and revisit it. I think when we took a look at the list that the Parks Committee had provided, which we really do appreciate the amount of effort there, one of the things that we were kind of trying to get a little bit of clarity on is what is the work that the Parks Group and the volunteers are going to be doing, and then specifically what are the items that the city necessarily was needing to be doing. I do know that depending on the location on the crosswalk, we think we can do something, although as it gets towards the highway, there is an
Right.
issue. Once it gets too close,
Right.
it becomes an
Yeah.
ODOT concern.
Yeah.
But along those same lines, the striping, the traffic, Scott was telling me earlier today, those are all things that, are within the public works purview, the streets purview.
Okay.
And we can take care of.
Okay.
At relatively little cost, so it's not a huge budgetary issue. But we were trying to get some clarity on
Okay.
if and what of those other items was the expectation that Jimmy was gonna be doing or upkeeping versus what the Parks Group was going to be doing.
As far as the doing, I think for certain, the Escalonia hedge would probably need help from Jimmy, because it's, as Scott knows, it's big and overgrown, and I think it's beyond what I would expect our volunteers to do. The other thing, in preparing that strip around the pavilion with the compost and stuff, if we could have Jimmy's help to do that manual part of that, that would be great. Although if that's not possible, we maybe can grab some spouses and that and get it done. But because I think we are all ladies of a certain age, and we still have a lot of energy, but
I think if it could be marked off specifically
Okay.
for how much, that would really help.
Okay,
And then-
all right.
Then I'll talk with Scott about
Right.
what that's gonna take and how do we get that.
And I think those are the two main things, right, Alana, as far as
Right, but the
Jimmy?
area around the pavilion, tell Jimmy if Jimmy can help us. Do not worry about it yet. We only are gonna worry when we're ready to put our moo-moos in there.
Right,
If he does it now, the people that are using it all summer long,
right.
maybe it's not gonna be in the same condition we're gonna need it to introduce the transplantation of.
Right, because it'll get trampled.
No, I think we
It'll
just,
get all
we just
trampled.
need to know the scope so
Right,
I can
yeah,
have
right,
a conversation with
right.
Scott and Jimmy to
Right.
figure out exactly what it's gonna take.
Because the moving of the Mugos would be in the fall when we're doing the other planter
Correct.
renovation, which you said you've got information for me on that too.
Yes,
So
we'll talk about
that's
tomorrow.
probably enough to be said about that. So does that give you a better idea of what we're looking for? I understand that some of those public works things and the cost, all of that is to be,
Yeah, I was kind of discussing with Dan earlier, and the memorandum for, I guess you'd call it a memorandum for council is awesome. For public works, if you guys actually just separated that off to like a check
Okay.
sheet where you just have the items that you want to see
Okay.
done, and then just mark, like, if you guys are doing them, or if it's an ask for public works, and then we can
yeah,
evaluate those
there's a
asks.
page missing, so I'll get that to you,
Yeah,
yeah.
that'd be
Because I
great.
did have
And
it
I can get
separated
together
out.
with Dan, we can come up with,
Okay.
like, is it stuff that we just normally have on our schedule, it's just gotten missed, or is it
Okay.
new stuff that we need to kind of figure out how to budget?
All right, I can do that.
And I'm sorry, I thought we printed off the list, so I apologize there.
That's okay, because, I just mainly wanted, because I think we're anxious to get started with the weeding and that, and I just wanted to make sure that we had authorization to do that from council, and understanding that things that require cost in public works and maybe bigger beyond our scope, and not really asking for that to be authorized at this point, so.
So can we do, I know this committee had kind of sat, not in use for years, can we give them a blanket thing to let them decide? Or do we need to approve each time they're gonna do a beautification, the whole scope?
So you have the ability to empower a committee up to a certain point. Really, the point where it becomes a issue is really when there's a certain amount of time and money involved in some of these projects. You know, and these, you know, most of these were fairly minor in Scott's opinion in terms of the overall aspect. But as those kind of grow and as those materialize into more significant projects, they will need to come, and the Parks Committee can come directly to me, and then I can work that out with Scott. But there will need to be an understanding that, you know, right now we're at X dollars, you know, or an X FTE with, you know, somebody maintaining parks and streets. And as we increase that workload, it starts to detract from some of the other things. One of the things we hope to provide the council here by the end of the summer, you know, Parks is new in some respects, is kind of a more comprehensive list of what we're doing, so that you can see the different pieces, how long they're taking, and how we spend the FTE. Now, obviously, that's going to be different in the summer than in the winter, and there's a transition period. But in the winter, there's a good opportunity for that FTE then to spend more time on streets, which is, you know, and some of those issues, and backfilling some of the public works stuff that is urgent, you know, when trees fall across the street, you know, et cetera. So you have the ability, obviously, as a council, to empower the Parks Committee. I would just say that there is an aspect that they will still need to either bring to the council or be cognizant of in terms of cost that I might bring back to the council if it becomes something that we're really starting to look at as a budgetary effect.
Well, and I do feel that it is a city committee, and I'm not comfortable with us just deciding we're going to do stuff and doing it. You know, because it will be kind of project oriented, and so if the council's behind it, you know, then we're comfortable doing it. But I don't think we're comfortable just deciding we're going to do this and go doing it.
We'd like to fill out the paperwork. We know what our next project would be. We know what our goals are. We know what each tagline is. I prepare a financial statement every month for all of you to review the financial statement, and also the set of minutes from our previous meetings. I hope I'll submit it to the commission. And then we all together, the ladies, right now it's our ladies, are looking forward. We are going on Kitty Wayside now. And as we progress through Kitty Wayside, we have our next meeting, we decide what is our next project, the north side of City Hall or whatever. We will bring that to you. But we do have our own money that we got ourselves, and I believe our balance right now is $505.
Yeah, so we do have
So
some
we
funds,
have our own funds at this point that I am tracking.
Jeez.
So anyway, that's just, I just want the council to know what we're planning and that you're in favor of that, and then we will take it from there. Okay. Let's see here. So we're back to the city manager report.
All right. So I'll run through these fairly quickly. The city hall reopens. As you see, our door is now unlocked. We've finished the work up front. I hope it meets everybody's approval. We feel that was, you know, kind of met the standard to be able to open with COVID. You'll see that the sheriff's office has done a really nice job with what they did up there. I would particularly call your attention to, because I think I'm going to have it applied to some of the other staff windows. They have put a white sheen on the outside, or white application on the outside of some of their windows. From the inside, it looks like you're looking through a screen, and it's really not, it just darkens a little bit, but it's not that bad. From the outside, it's totally opaque and you can't see through. It really is, you know, from a privacy aspect, it's fantastic. From a security aspect, I think it's really a good idea. And from a temperature control aspect, I think there's some real benefits. So, and having sat in that office when the sun's blaring down on you, I think there are some real benefits. So I'm going to look at the costs, and if they're prohibitive, I'll come back to you. But if they're relatively minor, I think I'm just going to go ahead and have that done on some of the staff offices, like the finance and planning and the current city manager office, and potentially the city recorder office if that's how she chooses. Let's see, grants, working on a number of different grants right now. We're getting some encouragement to reconsider the application for, but however, others that were kind of going ahead full steam. We did turn in a broadband funding grant this last Thursday that has some distinct possibilities. Code enforcement, we met with TCB. I put the contract together. I actually have not got it signed through TCB yet, but the anticipation is we'll get that signed and they'll get started here pretty shortly. And we're doing that under the COVID-19 authorization so that we don't have to do the full RFP process. We will do the full RFP process with the anticipation that likely they're the only bidder in the area. We will do that next year, but under the COVID authority, we are taking advantage of being able to just get it done quickly, as it is kind of an emergent situation. And we are starting to get letters of code complaints already.
So somebody asked me whether we will be having the same guy that's doing it for
No.
Yachats.
No.
Okay.
The indication is that it will not be Tony.
Okay.
That it will be another gentleman who is coming off patrol duties.
Okay.
So, the Driftwood property is listed with a realtor, and we've gone back and forth a little bit, but it should be available. I think we've settled on $30,000 as the list price for the parcel. It is very difficult to get to, so I'm happy to take any of you up there if you want, but it is not exactly accessible in a lot of ways. I think whoever purchases it will need the first thing they'll need to do is some pretty significant clearing with a bulldozer. But it is, a very attractive property, and it's right next to the Driftwood Park, and so it's quite nice. Water tank settlement, as they say, the check is in the mail, and it was sent certified, so it's supposed to show up here any day. I was kind of hoping it would be here and we could do a big, group hi-ya. But, the leak detection, they've been here for the last week. We found some great leaks. I sent you an email today with a picture of a video that Scott and Mike took of a fantastic leak they found. It's amazing the amount of water that comes out of these things.
Is that the Overlook one? Or?
No, this wasn't Overlook. This was...
It's actually down at Key Wasteland Park.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
that's where all the trucks are. Okay.
Very excited by this because as these leaks get done, and then as Scott goes through and does the water calculations, we've historically been running very high on our water loss. And this is both good and bad. As we reduce these, we're dropping, but we're not dropping to where we don't know that we have significant water loss elsewhere. And that's going to really come back to re-emphasizing the importance of doing the meter project, because we're still going to be probably at what, 20%, you think? A little over? And we do need to get down to about that 10%. So the meter project is becoming more important in handling that water loss situation. And I'll have lots of great information about the meter project at the August meeting.
Okay.
As we get bids and talk about the costs of some of the meters and how we plan on doing it. But Scott's got a really good idea of how to get it done very affordably without doing the $1.2 million grant and without changing the cost for the consumers' water
Great.
costs,
Great.
which I think is really good.
Yeah.
COVID and staffing, we did have one staff member who had to quarantine. He was not positive, but he did have to quarantine for the 2 weeks. There's a process that we will get reimbursed for that time off through FEMA. I'm still not entirely, it seems a little voodoo to me, but I'm still waiting to see how that materializes. And then meetings, and this is one of the things that I'm looking for you all for guidance. We've gotten kind of called out because we haven't been able to put a quorum together on these last minute meetings. I think it's fairly unfair that they've kind of made an issue of the fact that Waldport didn't come together. But I also think that when you don't have the material for the meeting before 24 hours before the meeting, it's
Exactly.
pretty hard to demand, and honestly, I think if they took a little bit more time, they might have some less publicly disastrous results. When we do get requests for these meetings, my instinct is to send you a request and say, can you all make this meeting? But should we push back at first and say, we really, we prefer to have 7 days notice before these?
Well, yeah.
Because this is the nonsense that's ensued because we're rushing to make,
Right.
they are rushing to make decisions. Because even if it doesn't conflict with something, but if we have 24 hours to think and process, and then it's on the phone with all the municipalities,
Exactly.
there's no real processing, and then a
Right.
decision is made, and it's just,
Yeah.
to me, that's,
Yep, I agree.
24 hours was-
Plus, we're always last. Waldport's always last, too. It's like, all the other cities decide and what they could do.
If you've got a few days, and a week is plenty, you can wait things in your own way.
Exactly.
You know.
Well, and I
the
know
Lincoln
that
thing.
individual
Road
counselors in some of the cities pushed back, just as you were saying, that this is not, this is not a good process.
I sent Claire a personal message. It was so rushed, and she was so busy, she didn't get back to me until after the fact. And,
and I'm friends with all three of the county
Absolutely,
commissioners, and I
yeah.
like them, but I think this has just been a mess.
it has.
And then it seems like Waldport's taken some hits, like somehow we haven't done our
Right.
job.
Yeah, that was
Which
a little
would debate,
frustrating.
because we deliberated
Right.
well
Yes.
in decision making, and it just didn't go along with what they thought. That's all. You take those hits.
Which we might have saved them some, if they had
Listen,
listened to us,
That's right.
might have saved some pain. So how, are we supposed to be individually notified? Because there've been a couple meetings, I just stumbled onto Facebook, somebody said, oh, the county's doing a meeting via Newport's streaming service, and I wasn't even aware of it until minutes before it started or while it was happening.
I think I only knew because you shot me a message.
So, and that's been an interesting problem,
Yeah.
actually, in that they have not done a great job in communicating out. I think CM Hall out of Newport actually had a pretty significant complaint at one point about exactly that. That she was just totally unaware of this meeting and was frustrated that she was basically given the access of, the general public, and she was supposed to be a participatory member.
Yes.
And that was,
well, then the link has been faulty
faulty several times.
several times, so then you end up having to do it by phone, which is just not nearly as
Effective.
effective.
So
Yeah.
I would like to send a request back up to them, and maybe I just need to do it, but that the county comes up with a list of all the municipality council members' email addresses, and when they're going to have a meeting, that we all get notified.
I absolutely agree, and I can do that.
Yeah.
I can
Shall
send that to
we
you.
also request 7 days' notice,
Yes, absolutely.
including the written?
But I guess,
Material.
look, there might be a situation where
Yeah.
if Monday morning they want to call a Thursday meeting,
Right.
and it's not the second Thursday of the month at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm fine with, even this last one that caused so much stir, if they had given 3 days notice.
Well, somebody could have thrown an opinion out there that may have
Yeah, yeah,
hold the reins here just a little bit.
Because the intentions were good,
right.
but they
Well, I hear
missed
that.
by a mile.
They
Right.
did, and I'm
But
not
also,
sure
I
what
think the
intention was.
documentation was barely ready before the call.
And therein
Yes.
lies,
It
therein
wasn't
lies,
even 24 hours. They were still working on it right up to.
So none of us could review it,
Yeah, exactly.
because a cursory review by everybody in the
Well,
municipalities
and
would have been,
It's like Greg's response was, immediately we all got lumped in
Right.
with the decision-making process, which we had no say-so. And they throw that carte blanche out there, well, all those darn politicians, they make those decisions. They say, wait a second.
Right.
That's when it
We
was,
were part of that.
that was when it was good that everybody was saying Waldport never participates. But yeah, we made national news. So.
Well, I don't know that we should have gone that far, but we should have been in the news for that. Because that was newsworthy.
All right, I'll send a message up. Let's see, per request, so we're working on the employee handbook and making some changes. Once we've refined those, I said August, I put here the August meeting. I don't know that I'll have all my discussions with staff done by the August meeting. I hope to, but there's some folks out on vacation. I want to give everybody a chance to kind of weigh in and be able to put this together. But we will bring some changes that we're putting into the employee handbook and how kind of some of the operations are going to run. We'll bring that to you just as the time goes on here. Also, we should have the to-do projects. The mayor was asking today about some projects that were in the notes from last time. You know, one of the things that I promised is that we'd have a little bit more transparency, and I tried to notify, but there are some things that I kind of consider kind of the low-hanging fruit and haven't been doing a good job necessarily of maybe following up and saying, oh yeah, you know, Scott's folks did put up some signs. They did address the leak up on Fairway? Or the water up in Fairway,
Yeah.
looks like it was a leak.
Okay, great.
And part of this leak detection, we're finding some great things, so they're hoping that that changes the water level a little bit.
So maybe the one on Range is too by my house.
It's not. I did have to check it twice though.
Yeah, right. Because it does ooze every winter.
But we will have shortly up the whiteboard with the project, so you can, when you stop by City Hall, pick up your packet or just are curious, you can stop by and take a look. We are starting, as part of the annexation request that we received, we are going to start a urban growth boundary adjustment process. There are two forms of urban growth boundary adjustment. One is a growth, in which is a longer process where you do a full buildable lands inventory, and one is a realignment, and this is more of the realignment. I think right now our urban growth boundary defines areas that aren't necessarily likely to be urban growth, and it omits areas that are not only urban growth, but we're growing, and we're actually providing services to the people in those areas, and they're not in the city limits, which creates some other issues for us. So we're going to do a process where we re-examine that and make some changes that allow for a little bit easier process when somebody says, hey, I want to annex into the city, or if somebody says, hey, I'd like to be able to get water service for us. So I will advise you as we go along with this process and then bring it to you when we actually need to do the overall adjustment. But the hope is it will make, the urban growth boundary right now doesn't make as much sense as it should. And the hope is after this is done, it actually makes some sense. You know, in a quick summary, if you're not familiar, urban growth really is supposed to define that line where within the urban growth boundary is your city and outside are farms and forest. And so we just need to be cognizant of that we don't have forests sitting inside the urban growth boundary that nobody's ever going to do anything with, and that we don't have cities sitting outside the urban growth boundary where people are, you know, continually building, which is kind of what we have in some areas right now. Small city allotments. Scott got the ask for the small city allotments project done this morning for me. We're going to be refining it and submitting it later today, or actually it'll be probably tomorrow. Basically what we're going to do is we're taking advantage of the work that we were planning on budgeting for up on Range Drive. We're going to do a slurry coat as well, and this is important, I think, in terms of our application for the Safe Routes to Schools as well. We're going to be doing a section, and it's going to seem like a paltrily small section, but we're going to do a section of the multimodal path and crosswalk that will be tied into the Safe Routes to Schools application. One of the things that Safe Routes to Schools looks for and judges is the project shovel-ready, is it going to be done? And I think that even if we're not successful this year with Safe Routes to Schools, that this will greatly advance by being able to show that not only are we doing this, but look, we've already done a a, several 100-foot section of what we intend to do in the long term.
And where is that section going to be?
That will be up on Range Drive, basically from the tip by the golf course heading down Range.
So from Masters to Crestline, is that, or less than that?
It's gonna be less than that.
Okay,
It gets a lot more expensive with the,
Multimodal path.
thank you, because there's a lot more infrastructure. in
Right.
that. So, calculating it out, just a regular sidewalk, you can actually, it's about that much money to get to Masters, if there's no complications, but the multimodal path has quite a bit more, there's a lot more stuff, but they're all more beneficial.
so the Crestline Park, is it going to be multimodal or is it going to be a sidewalk?
The intention is that all of this will be an ADA accessible multimodal path.
Multimodal, okay.
Because we want to be able to show that we're doing bikes, that we're accommodating pedestrians, and that we're accommodating obviously cars and creating a separation.
So would that be on the north side of Range? Or the south side of Range?
Unfortunately, Range Drive, we actually were talking about that, and Range Drive actually shifted to the north side. So there's actually not enough room between the pavement edge and the properties on the north side to put it on a site, even though it makes more sense there, so it'd have to go on the south side.
On the south side. So they'd have to cross over from Masters, because that serves that whole Murray development back there. So they'd have to cross over from Masters to the other side, go up that side, and then which side are we going to do on Crestline?
So actually, we got the report back from the engineer just the other day.
Yeah.
I skimmed and read it, and there are complications on both sides.
Right.
I am really going to push very hard to do it on the east side, where you have only a few driveway intrusions down to one of the ranches that's
Right,
down there,
right.
but that you have a long, flat, straight stretch of unbroken land where you won't have to have, 20 driveways that people are having to come in and out.
But then going from the south side of Range back to the east side, so that
Well-
you're creating, more,
Okay.
more crossings, but go ahead.
For looking at
Yeah.
it from your angle, and I agree, if we could put it on the east side, and I'm sure Greg would like it on that side too.
Right, right.
But here's the skinny, that's a county road.
Yes.
right? Okay, and is the county road requirements for lane width different than in the city? Perhaps it's wider and narrow.
We've got actually quite a bit of right-of-way there, so that shouldn't be a big problem in terms of the usage, and the engineers have already kind of figured that out. Along with that, we've already anticipated that, we were anticipating that we were going to have some crossing at Range anyways. When we look at the sidewalk going down Crestline, continuing the idea that the sidewalk will eventually continue down Crestline, we've kind of gone back and forth on how that's going to look and where it's going to be and what the values are. There's an issue with the cemetery on Crestline that creates some issues in terms of the sidewalk on the west side. There are some utilities on the west side, so they kind of always thought, no, it would need to be on the east side. Basically, because of topography and because of all these conditions, we end up kind of with a patchwork of sidewalks that kind of switch different sides. We're trying to come up with a comprehensive plan that will minimize those as much as possible. But that's why in the small cities allotments, we are actually doing a crossing up there, because we recognize that we are going to have a couple safety areas where we are going to have street crossings. And what we're trying to do is make sure that they're in places that traffic either naturally stops, or that they're in places that we can create a stop for traffic without interruption. It's tough, because I did consider if we put it on the west side where we started, we could go all the way to the school, but they still had to cross to the parking lot or that entry to the school to get to the school. And along that same side, they would cross at least 20 driveways and one street. Whereas on the other side, they'll have one crossing, and we're going to work with the county on getting a stop sign or something up by the school that will control traffic a little bit, speeds, that's my hope. And then we can have that go a little farther, so it's crossing onto the right side of the school area, and right down into the school. So it's tough, but I would say that I'm working really hard with Scott and I'm working hard with ODOT and looking at it to try to minimize the times that pedestrians will actually have to cross the street.
So if it's multimodal from range to the school, bikes going both directions for children on one,
But it's
One-
wider. It's what.
Yes.
but there will be an expectation that the kids could ride to and from school
Yes.
on the sidewalk.
Well,
On
on the
the-
bike part of the pathway, yes.
Right, but sidewalks are not for bike travel.
That's why it's a
That's
multimodal
why
path.
it's a
So
path.
you get a
Yeah.
little hump or a little curb, and then you get a bike path that goes both ways, and then you get a sidewalk. And that's generally the multimodal path. And so you can have bike traffic going, you can have pedestrians going, and it allows for mixed use along the entire route.
What about parking? I don't know if you've ever been up there. There's several vehicles that park all up and down the east side.
And they're not actually supposed to.
Right.
But if you take that away, there is nowhere to park. So now you're gonna have either them parking on the sidewalk, because you know they're gonna do it, they're gonna drive right up on that sidewalk anyways and park.
Well, then we'll
Because
don't.
there's nowhere else to park.
Well, they're driving.
We have code enforcement next week.
I mean, honestly, they're parking there because they're living in those residences. Those residents need to provide the parking, as our code says, those residents need to provide the parking in their driveways,
Right.
you know?
And currently, the intent of the county when they widened that was no parking. And they actually asked us to keep an eye out, and if we start having a problem with parking in there, they'll either call those residents and remind them that that's actually no parking, or they can start adding no parking signs.
I think it's just a few certain ones up there that do it, but yeah.
So
It can be easily
Do-
identified.
Yeah.
do others of you not remember? I thought when the county came and did that, then the exchange was, it was going to be ours then after that. It was our problem.
So we are discussing that a little bit. And I actually had a conversation a little bit with Wayne about that today. Well, not about that, but about the right-of-way along there. But yes, there is a potential that we will inherit that street at some point.
But didn't we already?
No.
That's my question.
No,
I thought
and
we
Scott and I are really going to make sure we don't inherit it until some certain things are done at their
Well,
expense.
Yeah, and I thought that they did a paving and the path, and then it was like, now it's yours.
No, they did that, at the time they did it, we did discuss in the future taking it over and
Okay.
what
So it was just a
negotiations
discussion,
would need to be for
okay.
that. When we did the engineering for the sidewalk stuff and all the surveying stuff, we did get our engineering firm got a permit from the county to do some core
Okay.
drilling in the base of Crestline, so that if we do go down that route, or if you guys do go down that route,
Okay.
you guys also have the knowledge of what the base under that road actually looks like. Because a lot of municipalities, when you take over a road from another entity, there's a lot of negotiations with the conditions that you're taking over.
Exactly.
Let's see, I already mentioned the broadband grant. So we're meeting with a service on vacation rentals. I had a quick conversation because I was concerned that the scale of this didn't make any sense. We had found 15, 16 of them, and we thought, that's probably pretty comprehensive. They claim that they have found 78.
Yeah.
We are
I'm not surprised.
very surprised at that number and
I'm
very
not.
eager now to see what they have, because that sounds surprisingly high. But we're going to see what they come up with. COG has hired a new planner. I have to say her name is Holly Hamilton.
Is this the one you?
And she is the one who
Talked about?
contacted me saying that she was moving to the area, and I said, oh, you should talk to the COG about getting a job. So I'm really happy that worked out, and I believe she lives in Waldport, which makes me even happier.
Yes.
Because we're paying the COG's travel for Justin. And signing that check every month makes me really happy not to be doing it.
Right.
Let's see, a topic that we brought up and then got pushed back, but I would like to re-bring up because it will affect how we discuss old business and new business, is council rules. And so I'm going to target I'm going to basically look at how long the meetings are in August and September, and try to pick an appropriate time to talk about council rules and have us go through a review of what the council rules are. And we'll send out the council rules a couple weeks ahead of time so that you can become familiar with them. But this is just processes like, sending out a solicitation for agenda items. Right now, the city manager makes the agenda. You'll remember that I was the one who wanted to change that prior when I was sitting in Susan's seat. So I think that there are some opportunities to make some effective changes to council rules and council operation for these meetings that I think benefit everybody, and it will be good for us. Along those same lines, as meetings that we have had again, we have received notice from Ms. Lundeen that she is indeed going to appeal the LUBA, our last decision. So that she has sent a letter of intent to appeal. She has not actually filed the appeal yet that I'm aware of, but that has been communicated. So we may not be done.
What's the deadline for appeal?
I don't know that information. I think once she sends the letter, she gets quite a bit of time to put together the appeal package. And then lastly, the state has sent out a allocation list for COVID funds from the CARES that came to the state that they got to push out. And we are scheduled right now to receive, and this is not guaranteed, but it's much more in writing than it's ever been, $62,000.
Excellent.
So we've already, Scott and I have already started looking at some stuff specifically that is, it addresses some urgent maintenance for the community center roof that directly affects Meals on Wheels' ability to put out meals, which falls under COVID. We've got some other things that we'll be spending money on that we've previously talked about, but we'll likely be coming back to you with some ideas here at the August meeting in terms of some of our expenditures. But most importantly, that now gives me the opportunity and the funding to pursue opening the restrooms at both the park and downtown. So I will be meeting with a contract representative very shortly on that, and I hope to have some good news on that front pretty quickly. I need to find out exactly what the rules are going to be and how we do it, but we'll at least be able to pay for the bathrooms to be cleaned as appropriately as we're going to have to do that to be able to open them. So that's good news, because I know that we've had some very public complaints about people not
No
using the
bathrooms,
restroom.
yeah, exactly.
And that's what I
Where
have.
would they be using it?
On the 19th.
You don't want to know.
Wayside.
Lastly, and I'll toss it to Scott here if he's got anything else as well, but there is a planner's report. We
Yes.
did not have very much happening for quite a while. That is now changing. For better or for worse, we now have a lot of activity for the planner, a lot of permits, and a lot of potential construction projects. So that is good news. Scott, do you have anything for Public Works at all?
I do. If you can urge your citizens, if they see especially stuff with water and sewer that just doesn't make sense to them, to make sure they give us a call. We've been chasing leaks for 3 or 4 weeks, and we actually found the one we were looking for, and then found out that somebody had actually noticed an issue with it, and they just didn't say anything. So if you can urge it, if something doesn't look right to a citizen, especially with water, make sure they call Public Works or City Hall, and we'll always take that call.
Okay, is that the end of your report?
That's it.
Okay, we have council comments or concerns?
Well, we do have one more.
Yeah, I've got that in mind.
Well, under additional public comments, we did have a letter that came in
From Eva.
from Eva regarding electro hypersensitivity.
I think you've all seen it.
Yeah.
Read it. I read it.
Yeah, okay.
Harm reduction, I just wanted to bring up again, because I know we were trying to schedule for August. Harm reduction, when they came, originally the county came to us and asked us if we'd participate in harm reduction presence in the South County. It was focused mostly on needle exchange, but now they're spending a lot of time working with the transient community on providing hand sanitizer and mask and making sure they can, obviously a high-risk group, and so they're spending time in that. I don't know when we're actually going to get somebody from the county to do harm reduction,
The
but
last communication that I got from them was, we are really, really busy right now,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
maybe August, but I mean, we will obviously extend them that invitation yet again as we get closer to that meeting time and remind
So
them.
we're continually asking for them when they're ready.
Rick is raising his hand,
Oh,
so I'll let
sorry.
you acknowledge him if you want.
September is recovery month, we normally have harm reduction stuff happening in September. Even if we don't get to do what we do in September, I think we can still have all the benefits. I'm gonna be talking to public health about how we can have recovery month. And of course, we're the hub of recovery month down here, so.
And-
Just a thought, and normally Cedar and her group is involved.
Right.
And, you know, if we start publicizing soon, and APARC, which is the addiction group, we're having a meeting in August to talk about harm reduction.
And we really wanted to get Cedar to come actually talk to the whole council about that, and we'll see if that can happen, and no hands across 6 feet apart across the
We
bridge.
have to talk to the council to be able to do that. But hey, I can have a dream.
The porta-john at the skate park, is that been removed? I didn't check this week.
So we gave them, I just asked Scott about this today because I noticed it was still there. We had given them notice that they had 30 days to remove it, or and that just expired. And so the guys are actually going to pick it up, take it up to the shop, empty it out, take it up to the shop, then give them 30 days to come get it at the shop. And if they don't get it by that point, we will consider it abandoned, and the city will own a porta-john.
Okay, for whatever that's worth.
That's
They melt pretty easy.
from experience, Mark.
And then
Yes.
And then one other thing is, our area has a pretty low response rate to the census, which they've extended the deadline to self-reporting to October 31st. And who knows how they're gonna handle the other part of taking a census, which normally sending people door to door and stuff. I guess that's still gonna kind of happen. But I've been trying to push what the benefits are to the census, because I think there are some things like Medicare Advantage Part B that people are well aware of how it's impacted by the census response, impacts what kind of programs are available for our community, and Medicaid and other things. But there are also things like hunter safety training, beach pollution and erosion, and other things that are impacted by our response to the census. And so just want to go on record, tap, tap, about how important it is for everybody possible to respond to the census.
Absolutely. And I think the last I looked, the county was at something like 60-some%, and maybe the state too, but we were at some
45.
dismal, yeah,
So
much lower.
We're going to take the opportunity at the next billing to send
Okay.
out the census information on the back of it in terms of logging in.
Okay, like a
and-
link.
Yes,
Yeah,
the link.
okay.
And one of the things I think we'll really emphasize is that, if people like lower taxes or keeping their taxes flat, the responding to the census is what allows us to bring in exterior funds to the city.
Exactly.
So that we don't have to raise people's taxes to fund programs.
Right.
So,
And specifically when we
saves money.
I know you're going to talk about a different possibility for water meters, but like the grants we're looking at, those specifically are decided. And so when we look at wastewater management and biosolids and clean water and water meters, all of the grants that are available through the federal government are all decided based on census response. So the amount of money we qualify for is impacted.
Is impacted, yeah. And I think people just don't understand how important it is, and I really appreciate your
I mean, it's
doing.
for representatives in Congress, it's for
Well, right,
districting, it's
that's
for everything too,
And I know just from hearing from people that we're never in previous census that were never contacted or never got paperwork, you know? So we know that there's missing.
I'm 47, and this is the first time I've ever filled out the census info, because I've never gotten it previously.
There you go.
Oh, my goodness.
There you go. So, there you go. Okay, so, we mentioned Eva's letter. Anything else good to the council? Yes. Are there any comments?
I think Rita's gonna lose this bet. Sorry, Rita. The time scoring of this meeting, we've passed your time.
Yes, you have.
I think it was Dan's fault, because he did just keep talking.
Well, he said he was going to. So-
But of course, we knew that when we hired Dan.
Exactly. Well, it's a poor bet when you don't have any control.
No, I am not seeing anything pertinent to the meeting.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
the code compliance.
Well, tell them it's starting soon. Okay, then I guess pursuant to ORS 192.6602E, to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing bodies to negotiate real property transactions, we will have an executive section. And
Thank you for
we
coming.
Thank you guys for
appreciate
coming.
Thank you.
for coming.
Nice to meet you, Jerry.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Thanks.